Hey, y'all, Zach McDonald, your real estate agent with Real Property Associates, and this is my Seattle real estate market update for February 2024. Well, we've got some different scenery here today. We're filming in the podcast studio, and I figured I would, instead of telling a client story this week, just share a little bit about the podcast that I started recently in this very studio. Dan Keller and I, mortgage loan officer and real estate agent here in Seattle, started Hello Seattle podcast about 3 months ago. And this podcast is geared towards people that are thinking about moving to the Seattle area. So they have questions about what it's like to live here. And I think it's also valuable for people that live in the Seattle area already. We've had episodes where we talk about the cost of living here in the Seattle area. We've interviewed a few different mayors, the mayor of Mukilteo and the mayor of Briar so far. And we've got a lot of fun content here coming up. So figured I would just real briefly here share about the podcast as we're in the same studio that we film it in on a regular basis. Now, let's talk about the market, because that's why many of you are here. You want to hear about the Seattle housing market and know what's going on right now in the beginning of 2024. So we're looking at last month's stats, so January 2024 stats. And as we finished up the month, we're looking at a median sales price in Seattle of $818,000. That's up 2.3% year over year from last January. And Bellevue, $2,200,000, up 39.8% year over year. And if we look back at the median sales price history in Bellevue, this is the second highest median sales price ever in Bellevue. The highest median sales price being $2.25 million back in March 2022, the record high, and we're not too far off of that in Bellevue. And things have been picking up in the housing market. We saw a drop off in closed sales month over month, 257 closings in Seattle, down 10.1%. In Bellevue last month, we saw 33 sales. That's 10% more than the same time last year. And looking month over month, we actually saw a decline in closed sales in Seattle and in Bellevue. And that's interesting because that's where we start to see things typically picking up is in January. Now, to be fair, closed sales in January are usually pending sales in December, which is when things slow down. So if I see a similar trend next month, I'm going to be a little bit more concerned. But even seeing these year over year numbers, we're seeing fewer sales in Seattle than we did last year. And we already saw a massive drop off. So it's not really what we want to see as we start the year off. Now, median days on market in Seattle, 24 days on market, down 14.3% year over year. Bellevue, we saw 31 days on market, which is down 26.2. Last year in January, we were seeing homes sitting on the market. We were seeing houses that had been selling for significantly below asking price. So we're starting to see those things changing as we saw the median sales prices increasing. We're also seeing that time on market dropping. Now it is up month over month. So December 2023, we had 19 days on market in Seattle versus the 24, and we had 16 days on market versus the 31. So there's some of those houses that had been sitting a little bit during the holidays have started to sell here in 2024. Now let's look at average percent of list price. Now in Seattle, we saw houses sell for 99.9% of the asking price. And in Bellevue, we saw houses sell for 98.1% of the asking price, pretty close to the asking price. Both of those are up year over year. So Seattle saw a 1.6% increase, Bellevue a 6.3% increase as far as percentage of asking price received. And I mentioned earlier that we're seeing houses start to sell quicker and sell closer to the asking price because things are picking up in the housing market. Now let's look at pending sales. This is a good indicator of how quickly things are moving right now. We saw 456 pending sales in January, which is a 12.3% uptick in Seattle. We saw 47 pending sales in Bellevue, down 16 0.1%. We talked about earlier in the video how in Bellevue, we saw fewer homes sold, and we also are seeing fewer homes for sale at the end of the month here in Bellevue, 57, down 36%. So it makes sense that we would have seen fewer pending sales in Bellevue. Seattle, we saw 13.4% fewer homes for sale as well, but still an uptick in those pending sales. So inventory is continuing to shrink. And that's why we're seeing, if we look at December, we had 1.2 months of supply in Seattle and 0.9 months of supply in Bellevue, both low numbers. And we've seen here in Seattle 1.1 months of supply in January, so down slightly. And in Bellevue, we saw 0.8 months. So again, down slightly from the previous month. I guess the real question is, what does all this mean, right? We see inventory shrinking. What does that mean? That means that we have fewer houses available for the buyers. And we've seen that the pending sale activity has been picking up as well. And what does that mean? That means that we have more buyers entering the market, or at least more buyer activity. So at the same time that we have fewer houses coming on the market, we have more buyers entering the market, or at least more buyers buying homes. And what that means is we're just going to continue to see a low inventory environment. And we haven't quite seen the push for new listing inventory, although I mentioned in the last video that we're going to see more and more of that coming into the spring. And I do believe that we're going to see quite a few listings here in the spring. We just haven't seen them yet. Maybe that's wishful thinking, to be honest, because if we don't see a lot of listings this spring, it's going to be a wickedly competitive housing market. There's still a lot of hope and expectation that we're going to start to see the mortgage rates coming down. If we look at the Mortgage News Daily survey here today on 2/6/2024, we're looking at a 30-year fixed rate of 6.96%, down week over week. 0.08%. We saw rates jump yesterday, just over 7% on this same survey, and rates haven't started to drop yet. But a lot are expecting that to happen here in the next couple months. And if that does, it's going to just add fuel to the housing market. So we're in this low inventory environment. We don't have a lot of houses available. And if we see rates start dropping and buyers start entering the market, as many are expecting, including me, all that's going to do is add fuel to the fire and cause a lot of competition for the houses that are available. Because what's going to happen when rates start coming down, especially in these higher price markets, is you're going to see a lot more people coming into the market, a lot more people that weren't able to buy or maybe priced out of the houses that they want to buy, starting to buy again. And when that happens, we're going to see multiple offers, contingencies removed, and it's going to be a lot more difficult to buy and more costly than it is right now. So if you're somebody who's thinking about buying in 2024, you're most likely going to have the best pricing and the least competition doing that right now. You may see more options later in the year. You may have a better interest rate later in the year, but you're likely going to pay more money, at least for the purchase price, when that time comes. And it might be a lot more difficult to get into a house then than it is right now. Now, if you're somebody who's thinking about selling and you're watching this video, you've got a house in Seattle or Bellevue or one of the surrounding suburbs, this is going to be a time where you can get your house ready. Like I mentioned earlier, I think we're going to see more buyers coming into the market as the interest rates start coming down. If you're on the market sooner, before there's more inventory that builds up, it bodes well for you having a pool of buyers that are expectant to see rates coming down and not as much competition. It just means more buyers per listing, which if you're a seller, likely means that you'll see multiple offers and some competition on your listing. I've had some clients recently that have been in those competitive situations. Other agents that I know are experiencing that as well. I heard one that was $150,000 over asking price already. I mean, we're starting to see the competition coming back into the market. And if anybody remembers 2022, I certainly do, early in the year, we were talking about 15, 20, 25, 30%, sometimes even more over the asking price. And it's not going to take long for homes to get really expensive here in the Seattle area. So my thoughts here as we wrap up this market update: if you're on the fence about buying now versus waiting, I would consider moving up your timeline. And if you're thinking about selling soon, I would start some of that prep work so you can take advantage of the buyers returning to the market. Thanks so much for watching this month's Seattle Real Estate Market Update. I am so grateful that you tuned in here today. If you got a lot of value out of this video, please consider subscribing to the channel and following along on a regular basis. And if you have any questions about the housing market or your specific situation, I'd love to hear from you.